Hey, it's Levi, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about the Epiphone SG Custom 3-pickup model. So basically, this guitar is a replica of a replica. Way back in 1961, Gibson was dealing with some struggling sales for their Les Paul model, and they were like, let's come up with something new, some fresh Les Paul model. So then they came up with something like this, right? 1961 SG. Originally, I believe it had 2 pickups and stuff, but regardless, it had a different Vibrola system. It had they call it a sideways Vibrola. It's a little bit different. So fast forward a couple years to 1963, and this was the last year that they had the Les Paul moniker on there because Les Paul wasn't involved with this guitar. He didn't like it. He was like, I'm a Les Paul guy. So Gibson ended up calling this the SG, but in that 1 year, they had the Maestro Vibrola and they had the Les Paul name on there, right? So it's kind of special in that regard because it's in this little kind of gap through the progression of them developing these guitars where they had, you know, this unique configuration of these two things. Now, of course, over the years, Gibson has done reissues and reissues, right? Now, in Canada, where I'm from, the Gibson 63 reissue SG Custom is like $9,000, which is quite crazy. I'm not like that. I'm a guitar player. I'm just like a regular guy and I cannot afford a guitar like that. And I don't know if I would even want to spend that much on a single guitar, but regardless, this is like every man's version of that, right? So they've taken that 63 reissue Gibson and they've made it more affordable, right? Of course, it's made in China because it's Epiphone, but they've kind of done a really good job with this, making it actually a really formidable guitar that I think holds up pretty well when I compared it to my other ones. Now, this video is not a comparison. It's more of a review of this particular guitar. So if you want to hear this guitar, hear the tone, all of that, right? I've made a separate video, I actually just posted it a little while ago, that goes through a lot of the different tones that I can get from this particular guitar. So you can listen to the guitar there. And then if you want to hear kind of my opinions on this guitar, then, stick around here and we'll get into that. So let's start with all the good things that I would say are like value benefits. First off, the Ebony Fretboard. For the longest time, they were making these customs with like rosewood or some other type of wood, and it just doesn't look right when it's not dark wood like that. This is actually ebony, which is awesome. That's the type of wood that a Les Paul Custom or SG Custom should have on the fretboard because it's a premium product. They're meant to be different than your standard, right? So I like that they've done that. I think they've done a really good job with this ebony board. It looks really good. Nice, clean grain. I have no issues with this at all. I really want to give kudos to Epiphone for doing that because it probably costs a bit extra, but at the same time, it's a really big deal in terms of the look of the overall guitar. Next thing I really like that Epiphone has actually finally gotten right is the binding color. For the longest time, they were running cream binding on these customs and it just never looked right. It just looked kind of yellow. So I'm really stoked that they have finally gotten white, which actually kind of matches the paint pretty well, right? You used to have to pay like $4,000 or more to get a proper white binding on your Gibson. Of course, it's not Gibson, but that's still a massive improvement, I've got to say. And it's just a different color of binding. I also really like the headstock design. I think they've done a really, really great job redesigning the headstock, bringing back that Kalamazoo style with your open book. Now it's not the same as a Gibson, but I think looks better in my opinion. But I've seen a lot of people with different opinions, right? Another thing I really like is the split diamond here. It's set up evenly. It's really, really nice and well put together. Just looks sharp, man. I'm really happy with that. The tuners on the back are actually all straight, which is awesome. I've criticized Epiphone in the past many times for having crooked tuners. And on this one, they're all straight, which is good because it's like, how hard could it be to put on straight tuners, right? Another big good thing I really like about this is Graphtech Nut. A lot of times, people would buy an Epiphone and they would put a Graphtech Nut on, right? So they've done that for you. So now you don't have to go get a new nut for your brand new guitar. This helps with string binding, right? So sometimes your strings will get stuck on the nut in the slot there, but the Graphtech Nut, it's naturally kind of lubricated. It's a bit of a slippy surface, so it does a good job at kind of preventing that. They finally have the shape of the horns and the shape of the SG like really dialed in. When I compare this guitar to my Gibson SG back there, they're fairly similar. Now, It's not exactly the same, right? Like the bevels still have some difference to them, whereas I think the bevels on the Gibson are definitely nicer, but these still like look right. You know, you hang this on the wall and it looks like an SG should. If the headstock was not in the picture, you know, it kind of looks like a Gibson, and I think that's awesome. That's kind of the whole point, in my opinion, when you're looking into Epiphones. Next up, thing I really like about this guitar is the pickups. I'm gonna put the name on the screen because I don't remember what it is, but basically they are kind of like remakes of the 57 Classics, which I also have in my SG. You can do a lot with them. I think they do really, really well. I think overall the build quality is really nice, really solid. This feels like a professional guitar. It feels like I could go perform with this on stage for the most part and feel pretty good about it. And I also think that the design of this guitar too, it lends itself well to performing because it's a very showy type of guitar. One somewhat controversial point with this guitar is the neck thickness. Now, the Epiphones nowadays are thinner necks than the Gibsons. That's gonna be a preference thing. If you want a thicker neck, you gotta save up your money, get a Gibson. If you're cool with a thinner neck Epiphone, honestly, it's a really kind of modern take on the SG, and I really dig that. The Vibrola is kinda good. I don't love it, honestly. Most of the time, I prefer playing with the bar back here like this, just out of the way. I like the way it looks, but I don't like using it as much as I thought I would. But you know, you gotta live, you gotta learn, you gotta try these things, right? Go ahead, try it. I definitely recommend giving it a shot, see what you like. There's kind of a major flaw with the Vibrola, and that's just that the bar can get loose and it can be a little bit hard to tighten it back up. What you have to do is you have to take this whole section off. When you loosen the strings, you slide this thing out, and then you can take a socket and a screwdriver, and then you can tighten them up. Some people use Loctite to keep them tight. I just use tension, and it's been pretty good since. But if you wanted to like take the bar off, you gotta take this whole thing off to take that bar off. So it's not like easy like with Stratocaster or Floyd Rose, where you can just kind of take the bar off just without taking anything else. But you know, it's cool and it works all right. I've got to say the tuning stability on this guitar is actually pretty good, pretty impressive. It's not going to be perfect. You know, when you have something like this that's messing with your tension on your strings, you're going to have some tuning issues, right? But it's really not that bad, especially if you're like tuning between songs and you're not really going that hard on this, just using it for a bit of vibrato here and there. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Just, you know, make sure you tune, make sure you lubricate your saddles. I don't have a roller bridge installed, but I've heard people do that, get a roller bridge. I don't know, I've never tried one. It checks out in theory. And I've got really 3 main gripes about this guitar. Thing number 1, there's one downside that I find with these pickups that I think might be unavoidable, and that's just that the middle pickup always gets in the way of my pick. Now, I'm used to playing, you know, with my pick kind of in the middle, in between the 2 pickups for the most part, and it's always hitting that pickup. And when you're playing with a clean tone, that actually is audible when you hit the pick on the pickup. So that's kind of annoying. I don't really like that all that much, but what I've had to do is kind of just shift over and try to like pick over the neck pickup or pick over this gap here, or just be very, very gentle and careful about how I'm picking, and that's been a bit of a challenge. It kind of gets in the way of the playing a little bit. Thing number 2, this pickup selector. Now I haven't had this like looked at by a tech, I'll have to, but basically pickup selector works fine on your bridge position, fine on your middle position, but it's just a bit finicky. It's like a bit unreliable when you go to the neck position. Sometimes it'll like fully connect, sometimes it'll half connect, and when it half connects, it sounds bad. It sounds like something is shorting out, or it sounds like the pickup has lost like 80% of its power. You know, it's a bit of a thing that gets in the way of your expression when you're trying to play the guitar. So I don't like that so much. However, when it does connect properly, the neck pickup sounds really, really good. Number 3, the finish on the paint. Everything is looking really, really good. Good dots, good paint lines all around, you know, good clear coverage, no damage, you know, from the factory or the store, which I'm happy with. But up over here, Where you would expect a nice straight line, it's just a bit squiggly. Like, I'm pretty sure they used tape or something like that just to get you nice clean lines, and they just rushed it a little bit too much on this top part. So every time I look over at this part of the headstock, I'm then reminded that I'm playing an Epiphone, because I can tell the line is a little bit squiggly and it doesn't look that high quality. And then I was curious, well, what does it look like on the other side? The other side's pretty much perfect, right? So like, they could have nailed it like they did here. They just took a few less seconds than they maybe should have with getting that paint line, and it, you know, it kind of ruins the look of it from my perspective when I'm playing. But whatever, it's cosmetic, so it is what it is. Do you recommend this guitar? Yes, I recommend this guitar, 100%. I'm really happy with how Epiphone has continued to step up their game. They've only gotten better since I started playing guitar like 19 years ago. You know, Epiphones used to be kind of like, not that good. Now they're really good. They like, you know, they rival the other guitar brands that I like to play, such as ESP, LTD, Ibanez. They've released guitars like this before, but they didn't look as nice, in my opinion, right? They didn't have quite the sharpest horns. They had like that cream binding, things like that. I think that they've done a really good job with this particular model and a lot of the new Epiphones that I've been seeing over the last few years. If you see a dealer exclusive that's like offering this type of guitar, I'd say jump on it. These are really, really cool guitars. Definitely fun to own, despite, you know, the drawbacks of having gold hardware. Gold hardware fades. So, you know, it's a little give and a little take. So that's it. That's all my thoughts on this particular guitar. Thanks so much for checking it out. Thanks for watching and hearing me kind of ramble about this stuff. And if you'd like to see more, let me know in the comments below. If you have any thoughts on this guitar, let me know. Otherwise, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you on the next one. And maybe check out this video here. I'll see you there.